Hello and welcome to another episode of French Ear Trumpet. I'm Andy from AJ in France, joined as usual by Colin. And today we're lucky to have another guest with us, Tom, who's got an excellent history that we want to find all about. And it was you, Colin, that found Tom for this, wasn't it?
That's correct. So Tom has me slaving in his garden on a regular basis. He's a smashing fella, and having had the opportunity and the privilege of being able to talk to Tom at some length, I couldn't resist the opportunity to bring him to a wider audience. So Tom, you're very very welcome to French Ear Trumpet,
Right.
and should we start with where you was born and the situation that you was born into?
I was born in Ashby de la Zouch, in a nursing home there. My mother was there.
Right.
And, that was 1946, March. My father had just got out of prisoner of war camp. He was in Stalag 3, the Great Escape Camp.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he flew Hurricanes. But he got shot down over the Dieppe raid back in 42. He'd married my mother the same year earlier, obviously. He got back, and 9 months later, I turned up.
Okay. Didn't waste any time there, did he?
If you spent at the age of 23, 24, you spent 2.5 years in a camp, and then you've got a girl to go back home to, then obviously you know what we're all going to get up to. So there we go. So anyway, move on from there. We had a house at the time in Melbourne, Derbyshire, which is next door to Castle Donington racetrack. So just to sort of orientate where Melbourne is. Moved out of there in 49, I believe, if I remember rightly, to a house in a village called Donisthorpe, which was near Ashby de la Zouch, about probably 3.5, 4 miles away, which was a mining village, very, very strong mining village. Lots of pubs, obviously. Going back there now, there's probably only two left out of probably around about 10 or 12 that were there, which is interesting. I do go back when I can, just to go through the village, just to remind myself. But anyway, the place we had was, because my father was running the business that his father had started, which was making elastic web for braces, brass straps, and all that sort of stuff, corset type material, in a town called Whittick near Colville, which was probably 12 miles away from us. The house we had was the miners. The owner of the mine was a guy called Colonel Turner, I believe it was Colonel Turner, and his main manager, a guy called Drinan. He moved out, and we bought the house, or my father bought the house that he owned, called Donisthorpe Hall, which was a really, really nice place. Anyway, moving on from there, off we went. I get sent off to boarding school because my grandmother on my father's side had provided a trust fund which provided money for the education of any children my father might have. He was an only child, and that's what happened there. So age of 6.5, I was weekly boarding. Age of 7.5, I was boarding every term at a school near Medbourne near Market Harborough, which was called Neville Holt, which was a really fantastic place. The only problem was it had a severely sadistic headmaster who'd been there for some time, who in later years we found out, not so long back, was a fraud. But anyway, that's another story. Moving on. I did 6 years there. The one thing, of course, corporal punishment was still alive and thriving then. And he used to take great pleasure in giving you, I got 3 of the best quite a few times, but you did it in your hand. And that hurts. That really does hurt. On your backside, which I got when I went to public school afterwards, That's not nearly so bad at all. That's sort of not a problem. But on your hand, that puts you out of action for half a day, really. Anyway, move off that. I did okay there, passed my common entrance, went to Stowe Public School near Buckingham. David Niven went there, Prince Radio went there, Leonard Cheshire went there, quite a few other main numerous. The worst one who I can't stand is Branson, of course. He went there because he got in to string a bloody sentence together. But there we are. So I did 4 years, 59 to 64. Yeah, 63. So I did 4 years there. And they were, first year was a bit rough. There's a bit of bullying and everything else. Got through that. And the last couple of years were pretty good. So there I am at 17 and a half. With a few O levels, not many, but a few. And off I went. My father aided me getting a job at Courtaulds in Coventry, which was a 22-mile journey away from Donisthorpe, which wasn't a problem. He provided, it was a minivan which I used. So, and I've had digs there in Coventry. Courtaulds provided it. In a lovely road called St Paul's Road in Coventry. Billionaires Row, it was known as, because the majority of it was. At the entrance to St Paul's Road off Hosel Road, the main doctor there, he's got a brand new Aston Martin, so that tells you the level of what's going on up there. And all the major building properties now, it's all mainly detached, and it all got good serious local businessmen in there and all the rest of it. And without getting too sort of complicated on ethnicity, they were all white. Let's leave that one like that for the moment. The house I was in was rented by the Mr. Vivian, who worked at Courtaulds. So, and he had a big house. This was a big house. And in this house, there was Mr. and Mrs. Vivian, their daughter, son-in-law, and 2 kids. Myself, another guy who worked at Courtaulds called John. We shared a bedroom. So there's a whole pile of people. There was a big garage there. And of course, John was interested in cars. I was as well. And really, we were allowed to just sort of do what we wanted to do. And we got sort of bed and breakfast, an evening meal, so on and so forth. So anyway, I then spent that time at Courtaulds. I was there for 3 years, working in the acetate and synthetic fibres laboratory, which was dealing with tricell and dicell. Dicell being the main ingredient of cigarette filters. So we had one particular laboratory which literally was smoking cigarettes in a controlled environment, obviously.
What a job. Oh my God.
So that was it, testing the dicell and all the rest of it. Tricell was used in clothing and everything else. It was an acetate fibre. Moved on from there. I obviously went to tech 1 day a week. For the first year, I didn't do too bad at that at all. The second year, I decided that tech was my day off holiday. So I was working on cars and doing things like that. And eventually, the results from the tech the following year weren't approved by Courtaulds sort of local management for me. I was then advised that I had, I think it was 3 months to find myself another job. So you wouldn't find that happening today, would you? You're sacked, you're fired, you're gone.
That's it. Yeah, just out the door. So how did your father take that news?
With a degree of sort of there you go. You know, what happened was because I had transport, which he provided. I was lucky in that respect. I used to go home at weekends, which was, say, a 20-mile trip, go home on Friday nights, and then set back off again on Sunday nights, or possibly very early Monday mornings. So obviously Friday night was a night out with the lads, Saturday, well, whatever. Because of that, I put on a fair bit of weight, because when you come from the pub at 10:30, the chip shop's open, we all went there, and you can work out the rest of it. So I wasn't very fit, but anyway, by the by. I then got myself another job working in, what did I know, 65, 66. Yes. 66. I spent the World Cup, watching the World Cup in a pub in Coventry, London Road, where I was working as a barman. I was working as a barman there full time. The first week that I worked there, the landlord, Norman, and he has his wife called Norma, and he was good. He was an ex-miner. He was big. He was as big as you, Colin, but bigger, if you follow me. He was broad. And he took me to one side after the first week, said, right, you've been stealing money out of the kitty. Did I? And I said, no, bro, argued it through and all that shit. He said, that's fine. Okay, carry on. You're working here now. He was also doing a test on me. So they looked after me.
Changes that.
In that pub, we had a front bar. Next to the front bar was a snug room, and at the back was a big dance hall. And those were the days in the 60s where, in Coventry anyway, there were 2 or 3 people running the dance halls in terms of the groups who were playing there. And we had an invasion one night where an opposite gang came in, and Norman gave us all lengths of rubber with a bit of lead in the end of it, and off we went, sort of bouncing these people in and out of the room. One of our boys got chased down the road. He got locked into a telephone kiosk until we rescued him, and he was a tough guy as well. But anyway, that was just that one. There was another good evening there. The dances were usually on a Thursday, Friday and a Saturday. And there was one Thursday when it was fairly quiet. And there was always a regular group of girls and a regular sort of band. And the girls were taking the piss out of this, the guy singing and everything else. And he got so tired. I stood there and watched this. So I was serving drink. He got down, picked her up, upended her, no knickers. So that was a bit of a riot then, just a bit of a laugh. That was good. But that's just the way it was, Anyway, that went on. Anyway, I then moved on and I got a job over in Stratford-on-Avon with a company there doing textiles, weaving and everything else. They actually did all the seat coverings for Concorde. Tibor Reich was the name of the company, if I remember rightly. I was there probably 6, 7, 8 months. I had a flat in Stratford, which a friend I knew had organised for me. I had one of sort of my worst sort of weeks there when I got tonsillitis, and that's not funny. Tonsillitis is not funny. But anyway, got through that. Eventually got back home, and the job ended there for whatever reasons. I then was back in Coventry, went to a local job agency, of which were plenty around in those days, and got myself at Jaguar. That was 1960. No, I missed a part out. I missed a substantial part out. I then got a job, with a company in Leamington, supplying and fixing tiles and mosaic. I was there 2 weeks, and they said, right, you're going up to Scotland to help one of my main men up there. They had 16 or 17 different outlets around the country. A guy called Harry Hobbs, who was a quantity surveyor. So up I went up to Scotland and stayed in a hotel in Paisley called the Friars Hall Hotel. Harry was there, and we were there, just based there, full stop. Going around various sites we had, one of which was the East Kilbride Inland Revenue Centre, which was probably a 20-storey-ish building, and the whole of the outside was covered in mosaic, which we supplied and fixed. What happened then was about 3 or 4 weeks before Princess Margaret was due to open it, a whole patch of mosaic fell off about 15 stories up. So we then had to get a firm to drop a cage over the side. Yeah, Stevens and Carter was the name of the people who hired us the cage from the top of the building. Put it down, we got into it, there was 3 or 4 of us, and you've got a motor at either end of the cage, which operates you going up and down. We did that, got up to around about 14 or 15 stories, and the cage is going side to side, backwards and forwards. So down we go. I said, we're not having any of that, till they put some ropes over to steady it, which they did, and then that resolved that problem. But that was quite a hairy moment as far as I was concerned.
I can imagine.
Yeah. But moving on, the one thing about Glasgow in those days was, the pubs closed at 10 o'clock. And I was told to go and see one guy, Tommy Crane, I think it was. Anyway, so I did, to get him to change sites. He was a sort of site foreman near enough. And he said, right, let's go do that. We'll now go and have a drink. So I went down to the local sort of bar. And it was one of those bars that, if you'd ever been in Glasgow or similar sort of areas, you walked in, you looked around, and you looked just at the barman, and you didn't look anywhere else except not there. And you got your drink. But then Ty said to me, he said, right, come and sit down. As soon as they knew I was with him, then the whole thing changed. He was sort of accepted, and that was that. Otherwise, I was just going to be a loner, unknown, building that, even Clint Eastwood wouldn't want to go into. Yeah. Anyway, that moves on from that. Moved on from there, left Paisley, back down to Leamington, worked there for a short period of time into 1969, when we had that big snowstorm in the beginning of January, which closed us all down for a few days. That didn't quite work out as it should have done. So then I went to, a local job agency and got a job at the Jaguar, which was at the Daimler plant, which was Radford, which is where they built all the Jaguar engines, all the rear assemblies, the rear axle assemblies, and did most of the machining and everything else. Excuse me, I'll have a little slurp as well.
Yeah, why not?
Carry on.
I was there I was a progress chaser, which meant you could travel anywhere around the factory without having to have movement passes or anything else, because you were looking after getting the jobs, one from being machined, finished, up to the assembly line for production. The first job I was involved with was we were still making the Ferret Scout car.
Oh, yeah.
I was involved doing, chasing all the parts for the hull, the main welded hull. So that was sort of interesting enough. And then I moved on to we did a gearbox. We made a gearbox for Alvis, the 120, I think it was, if I remember rightly, which was used in the Saladins or Saracens, one of those ones. So I was chasing all the parts for that, which involved heat treatment, plating, machining, milling, everything. So that was that. Then I got a chance to move up to Browns Lane because a friend of mine who had worked with at Bradford, he was now working up in Browns Lane in the experimental department. And I got a job and I got accepted and moved up there. As soon as I got there into the experimental department, there was, which we had our own machine shop there. We had an engine build shop with engine dynamometers. There was a chassis shop. There was a styling studio, which was strictly off bounds to anyone, obviously, and a main body shop as well. And one of the first things I saw when I got there was a guy on one of the lathes called Dag Whitmore, who worked at Radford when I knew him there, which certainly, and he said to me, Tom, you'll like it here, it's a holiday camp. And to a certain extent, it was just so relaxed in terms of there was no production hassle or shove or push. You were left to get on with what you were supposed to do. And provided you got all the parts that everyone wanted and everything else, it all worked fine. So that went on. Of course, with these days, this was 1972, 73, when, of course, Leyland was in charge. As such, we'd had the rider report, we had this report and all the rest of it. And really was, as far as we were concerned at Jaguar, it wasn't too much of a nightmare. The experimental, we felt isolated would be a correct word. We had a boss called Bob Knight, an engineering director, who literally protected his whole operation, which was all of engineering all of the drafting offices and everything, and made sure we didn't get amalgamated into the rest of the Leyland scenario. This is all sort of written down and everything else, but that's how it was. I managed to get myself elected as a little shop steward for our little department, and we had meetings. They decided one of the things that the Ryder report decided on was having worker participation meetings, which meant that we went and met with senior management, all the directors and everything else. So I got to see, because for some reason we managed to miss out one level, so I went straight to the top level where we met all the directors and everything else. So I got to Longbridge, I got to Cowley, I got to Triumph, Canley, and that was a good one at Canley. Their director's dining room was certainly something. That was worth going to, that was. And you were able to ask these directors, questions, sensible ones. We did have occasion where one of the conveners or stewards from Longford started accusing them all of being on the take. That didn't go down too well at all, but that got around that one. Well, they did.
Can I just ask you a question about that? When you did have these meetings and you put questions or you suggested stuff, did that ever help? Did anything ever materialize from it? If you said, "Look, I've got a really good idea," did it ever filter down and get used, or was it just for show? If you see what I mean, the meetings.
Regards those meetings that we had, obviously suggestions we made or questions we asked were noted, but there was operating a very good suggestion scheme on the shop floor, which operated very well, where people put in suggestions because they were obviously working on the shop floor, they could see how things were being made, how they could improve on that. And that worked. That did work, there's no doubt about that. And it took a bit of time before management began to understand that really it did work. That, the people on the shop floor weren't idiots, and they were able to put forward concrete, sensible ideas, which, if actioned on, was going to increase productivity and productivity. So that's where that went.
So, Tom, just to interrupt you there for a moment, two things occurred to me that I'm stunned and amazed by your recall of everything, all names and places, because I can't remember what I had for breakfast most of the time. So, for you to be able to remember all those names and those places. So that's one thing. The other thing, and it's something that we're going to come on to soon, I imagine, was that do you think that the fact that your father provided you with a minivan stoked your interest and a lifelong passion for the Mini?
No, per se for the A series engine.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Yeah, I understand.
The minivan moved on, and my father, who had a sales manager, Mr. Wilkinson, his name was. That's right. He had a Morris 1000, which was now getting replaced, and I got the Morris 1000.
Right. There you go.
So we moved on to there, and I sort of tuned it up and did all this, that, and everything else. Put all this sort of big exhaust on it, all the nonsense. We move into 1976, and Jaguar decided, or Leyland decided, that we were going to go racing again with a company called Broadspeed in Southam, with the XJC, which was the V12 two-door Jaguar car.
That was the coupe with the big flared arches, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right.
I had a picture of that when I was at school.
Yeah, certainly a serious car. So they wanted some help from the factory. The factory was, as far as the experimental was concerned, because we were the main people who could do anything to help them. I sort of managed, because I was into motorsport, and whereas the rest of the people in my office, of which there was probably 10 of us, weren't much interested in motorsport. I was, and I knew some of the ropes as such. I made sure that I was the person who was doing a bit of liaison work with Broadspeed. So went there a few times, met some good people there, and that moved on. the whole program moved on to 1977 with sort of mixed results, as you might say. But that was interesting. That was good. Then Broadspeed got chopped through the appointment of a new competition director of BMC, or Leyland rather, John Davenport, who I knew and met, and I got on well with him anyway. So that was that. We then moved through the rest of the early 70s with nothing too much sort of dramatic happening that was affecting me personally. We get into the very early 80s, and I got mixed up with, there was two companies. There was TWR, Tom Walkinshaw Racing, down in Kidlington, Oxford, who were due to race the XJS, taking over from Broadspeed, various things that Broadspeed hadn't done, couldn't do, or wouldn't do, or whatever. So I was asked to then go by my boss at the time, a guy called Richard Aykroyd, to go, who reported to the then engineering director, Jim Randall. So I was then told to go down to Kidlington, have a look around and see what was going on, and come back. So I did that. Then I got involved with, because of Jim Randall, with a company in America called Group 44, run by a guy called Bob Tullius. I got a phone call one day from Jim Randall, who was over there, saying, can we do something about getting a different crankshaft made to give extra stroke so they could get a bigger capacity engine? So I said, yeah, fine, leave it with me, I'll sort that out, which I did, because I knew enough of the contacts. Because being in the experimental, we were always dealing with production suppliers regarding new components we wanted to make, or new components, full stop. And they would then help us to provide experimental parts to provide this, that, and the other. So that started me off getting involved with Group 44, and I made sure that I was involved because it just suited me. Walkinshaw's, I did more work down there. There was the main guy who was running the engine shop called Alan Scott, Kiwi. He and I got on well. And he used to come to meetings we had every month at Browns Lane, a motorsport meeting where there was Jim Randall, there was myself, there was various people there who were involved in the whole situation, who were able to make decisions. I could only follow what decisions were being made. I could only report. I couldn't make a decision as such, except to tell them what was going on in terms of what they asked us to do. So that worked well. Alan, Scott and I got on very well indeed, very well. Bob Tullius, that was another one where I got involved with that one, and I had quite a few, got 2 or 3 trips to the States organised. And if you went, depending on how many miles your flight was, you either went sort of economy, business class, or first class. So going business class was definitely good because you got the champagne, you got all the rest of it. Also, I mean, I was a smoker in those days, and you could smoke as well in the plane. Couldn't do that now. But yeah. And on some flights, especially American ones, in those days, if you were a smoker, you went to the back of the plane and you could smoke there. You were allocated a seat at the back, and that's where you were able to smoke. You know, how things have changed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
For the better, of course. By the way, I did back up smoking back in 91, so that was not a bad move either. Anyway, the whole Tullius thing, it turns into, Walkinshaw was an opportunist Scotsman who was thoroughly ruthless, fair, as far as I was concerned. He was good to me, looked after me, but ran his company in a way that the American Bob Tullius didn't run his one. Walkinshaw allowed his managers to manage. Bob Tullius couldn't avoid or help involving himself in every single bloody thing that was going on. So things didn't gel as well as they should have. and I'm trying to think how to move the thing on. We got to 1984 with Walkinshaws. 1983 was a good year. 84 was an even better year, where we'd organised getting some special body shells made at Castle Bromwich, which was where the XJS bodies were made. And I had special parts made to go on the bodies and everything else. And all we were trying to do is leave off all the left-hand drive stuff, which just added weight, and change various other things. So I made sure I got there with a couple of guys from Walkinshaws, Paul Davis, who was the main chassis manager, and Kevin Lee. That's right, Kevin, that's right. But I made sure that I'd got out of sales and marketing loads of stickers, any badges, anything I could find. Because if you give those to the guy on the shop floor, they like it. You know, they feel involved. You know, it's not trying to rule over the top of them. So we made sure that we had loads of that sort of stuff. And we're literally littering it all over the place. The foremen weren't that particularly keen on us, but the shop floor was. So we got these 3 body shells down the line with all the special wheel arches in, this, that, and the other, all the stuff missing off, and all the rest of it. And it really was, it worked well. And, you know, the guys at Castle Brom, they were good. But it was
just for people listening, I think I've got it right. So you're still working for Jaguar at this time, which was part of British Leyland still at that time.
correct.
And you're the liaison between the racing side of things and the factory, so that you go out there, deal with the racing side of it, the companies you've mentioned, and then you come back and say, right, well, we want these parts made in the Jaguar factory, we want this done this way, this special, this kind of thing, and you get it produced for the racing side. Have we got it right?
Yes, you have.
Excellent. Sounds like a really good job.
Yep, it was good. But I made sure it was good. There wasn't anyone else in my office that really wanted to get too involved. But I really wanted to get involved in that because I had not openings, but I was enjoying the job. You know, it was as simple as that. We had one case where Alan Scott, the engine guy, we had a problem with conrods that broke, and didn't break just once on one engine, they broke twice on 2 engines. So if you break one, fine. Break 2, you've got a problem. So we found out what the problem was. We then I organised then some different conrods, some conrods from the factory, but to be remachined in a separate way with a different bolt configuration instead of a nut and bolt configuration. And we did that. And at the next production meeting or motorsport meeting, I presented this sort of on the table as a sample. The engine director at the time, forgive me, I've forgotten his name for the moment, that'll come back as well. He said, I thought we did drawings before we made things. I said, sorry, this is just a sample of what we can do. So then they got it drawn up. You know, it's just it was me beating the system again.
Oh, yeah.
You know, instead of going down the correct route, I went another way, and anyway, it worked. But in racing, you've got to do that. You've got no choice. You can't go down the sort of, you know, correct route and all the rest of it, because otherwise you've got no time left.
Anyway.
Anyway.
I can imagine Leyland and Jaguar at the time were very keen on this is the proper procedure, this is the way it's done, and this is how you do it. So to circumvent it must be quite tricky, I would think.
Well, as a couple of people said to me later on, you wouldn't survive it now, Tommy. You were too much of a maverick. You know,
it's a good word.
But in motor racing, that's what it's all about. You know, you've got to cut any corners you can to get what you want, but to make sure you get what you want in terms of, you know, anyone trying to tell you that that's what you should have. You know,
Tom, 2 things, Tom. So at this time, was you still working part, or you know, working in your own time on the minis?
Yeah, up to a point. Only just sort of a hobby more than anything else.
Yeah.
It was just when I decided to leave Jaguar in 1984, and I went to work for Walkinshaws part-time. I was still doing work for Group 44 in the States, so I was, you know, earning money that way. Walkinshaws then said they wanted me full-time. I did 3 years there. They wanted me full-time. Alan Scott Smith said, right. I said, right, I will. This was January 86 or 87. Would have been 87. And I said, right, I'll make sure that we've progressed and got all the parts needed for the 87 season. Then I'm going to move on, which I did. But then, obviously, then working on my own, I had to decide what parts or things I was going to make and everything else. And the whole MIDI thing sort of started because I had one and I was interested in parts to competition parts. And I said to a gentleman I knew, Keith Dodd of MIDI Spares down in London, who's the biggest real wholesaler in the world of MIDI parts. No question of that. The amount of stock he's got is in millions. And so started a relationship with him where I was getting parts made, which he didn't think we would sell, but we did in vast numbers.
So these would be operating parts, parts for tuning and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, the stuff that special tuning or competition parts used to make, I got remade because those parts were only available then to the competition department. So that was sort of nobody else could get their hands on them unless you knew what you or who you knew, and that went from there. Excuse me. I'm trying to think how to sort of move the story on. And like Topsy, it grew. More and more parts. Can you make this, Tom? Have a look at this one. And we just made parts or new parts or revamped existing parts to a higher quality standard. So, you know, they, having worked at the JAG and sort of being forced to, not forced, that's the wrong word, but having to accept and realize that quality in terms of how things were made and everything else was more important to a certain extent than sort of just getting it made. Because if you've got the quality and everything else, you'll sell it. And it's as simple as that. So that moved on. And I built a very good business with MIDI Spares. I was also doing another business as well, where I was doing engine components for competition engine builders, steel cam followers, tappet shims.
Would this be the Rover 6R4 in the Group B?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So in the research that I've done on yourself, Tom, there's a brilliant story about the Rover 6R4 in that they wanted to use a V8, but it wouldn't fit. So they cut two cylinders off the engine, literally cut the engine in half and welded it back together. So it was a V6 at 2.5 litre. Just unbelievable things that they did to make it work.
Well, that's true. And two people involved with that were David Wood, who was the main engine director at BMC competitions. He's unfortunately disappeared or left us a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago. He and I got on exceedingly well because later on in my story, he was a draftsman as much as he was an engineer, and he did a lot of differential drawings for me over a 4 or 5 year period. We had so many good conversations because of both people we knew, situations we knew, and just good conversations. What more can I say?
Sure.
So following on from that, then you ran your own business, doing all these things that you've just mentioned, especially with the production of specialist parts for minis and other things, I think. But just want to get on a bit further towards where you decided that, I don't know, you're coming towards the end of not the end of your working life, but when you want to take a bit more of a backseat and maybe look at coming to France and how that came about.
That came about, literally, that was in 2002 or 3. That was as much because an ex-rally driver I knew and I rode with, Roger Platt, he had a house over here. He's been over here for 3 or 4 years before we got here. And we've known each other for long enough. I was his best man, that sort of thing. And he said, come and visit us. So we drove down, and he was in St. Claude, which is down the road from Conflans. So we got there, and literally it was a week of absolute sort of peace and quiet. It was so different from the rat race that the UK was, or Coventry was at the time as well. So that sort of got me to sort of start looking at properties when I got back. And we found the Spawn property here in Brigoy, which was on the market with a guy called Paul Pemberton, is the guy's name, as I remember rightly. And it was on sale for, in terms of sterling, £18,000.
So 1818.
18,000 pounds. So I got over here to look at it, got taken through it. It was not derelict, that's the wrong word. It had no electric. It did have, because the front room had been the bank of the village.
Okay.
Yeah. The bank then had moved to the next door building, which is now, or was, a hairdresser's, did-da-did-da. There was no mains water, there was no sewage, etc., etc. So I just paid for it without at that time sort of totally comprehending what a money pit it was going to be, as we all know.
Definitely.
Yeah. So on we went. We got the floors in, we got this in, we got that in, we got the water in, we got the sewage onto the mains drain, got all that in. We had a guy called Serge, an electrician, ex-EDF, who did all the wiring for me. And he did thick end of at least 95%. Absolutely on the money stuff. Really was good. And then we had another guy called Norbert, another Frenchman, who did the plumbing. Now, he used to bend everything properly. So there were no joins anywhere. And it's an oil-fired central heating system we've got. And it's fine. It's just fine. There's no problems at all. We don't get problems. All the electrics were done French style. All the plumbing was done, apart from a couple, which one has caught us out only the other week, English style, only because I brought stuff over. But anyway, there we are. Yeah.
So what year was that then? So you bought it in early 2000s?
03.
And when did it become livable?
07.
And how much work, if any?
Before, but it not sort of, as livable as it is now. Let's put it like that.
And how much work, if any, did you do yourself? I'm quite interested to ask that.
A fair amount. Marilyn looked after all the decoration stuff. That's the good lady. I looked after sort of in conjunction with. I was lucky to find two exceedingly good English guys, tradesmen. One was Adrian Clark, who unfortunately has gone to Australia. Unfortunate, but a shame. But he was a tradesman joiner, apprentice, and everything else. Absolutely magic. Wouldn't believe what he's done else. Colin, I think, has probably seen some of the stuff he's done.
Actually, can I just interject at this point and say it's a beautiful house, really, really interesting, and it's put together like a work of art. And the design, Marilyn, your good lady, she's got a fantastic eye for design and presenting things. It's just a beautiful, beautiful house.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good house. But I did a lot of work with both. The other guy we had, who we still got, Mike Jackson, who's a plasterer by trade, but also master of other trades as well. And he's done a lot of work in this house, a lot of plastering and everything else. And all the work's been done to a high standard. The one thing I was able to do was to liaise with both of them about how we were going to do certain jobs, engineering-wise, what was the best structural way to do things. So I made decisions and, as I say, made sure that things went the way they should go. We didn't cut corners. If something required another sort of day's work to make it sort of structurally safe, or safe, so full stop. Then we did it, because it's just simpler to do that.
So do you think your background in the engineering and the work that you did changed the way that you oversaw the renovation of your house?
Yes, as long as I was in conversations with the other tradesmen.
Interesting. And then, so
only to discuss which way round was one way or another way or another way, but which was going to be the best, safest, longest term way.
Yeah.
So we didn't go any shortcuts. It was whatever is going to be there forever and a day and after we're gone.
Interesting. And then, so Liverpool in 2007, is that when you moved out full time, or did you have it like a holiday home like a lot of people do?
No, that was 2007 is when we really sort of moved. We sold the house in England. That's when we sold the house in England. So that really was that. The other thing, what we had in England at the same time, obviously, was Marilyn's daughter, Natasha. She'd got her own house with a spare bedroom. So that's been our spare bedroom ever since 2007. She benefits. The one thing I did was, because in the UK, if you want to do anything financially, regards setting the house up, you need a passport and you need a utility bill. I pay Natasha's gas and electric. So I have a utility bill.
There you go.
I see.
Actually, at this point, Tom, I've heard the story. I think it's brilliant. So just talk us through how you was able to woo Marilyn and persuade her that you was her best bet. Just how you met Marilyn and all the rest of it.
Well, Marilyn's a tailoress. She worked in partnership with a Sicilian gentleman by the name of Giuseppe Michelli in a shop in Coventry. And I'd used them to have a couple of suits made a few times. And really, it was just something that developed from there. She made one of the last suits I had. I took her out for a meal that evening or the evening after I got the suit. And hey ho, there we were. So we got married we met in 88, 89, got married in 91, 92.
Well done.
It was a good wedding. It was a good day, that was. Yeah. That was a good day. Weather was fine. It was just everything.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So I'm dying to know, what car do you drive now?
We've just got a VW Touareg. I've got a Mini Cooper S outside as well.
Ah, there we go. I knew it. I knew there was going to be
so when that Mini Cooper pitched up outside the front door, Tom said to me, "Oh, we'll take it around the block." And I said, "Tom, if I take that around the block, A, I may not bring it back, and B, I may kill myself in it."
Yes, I would think so.
It's in slightly better condition now than when you first sat in it. So we've had various jobs done on it. Right. One other job to be done. There's a little bit of welding underneath to be done, which Lee's going to sort out for me.
Right.
Yeah. So, but yeah.
So, what were the difficulties of? So, when you came to France, what were the biggest difficulties language-wise that you found?
Same what I've got now.
Oh, how much? All right, let's rephrase that. How is your French?
Not as good as it could be, but I can read a menu.
Well, I suppose that's it. So, because I'm thinking, if you need to go and get parts for a car or anything like that, how do you cope with that? Or do you not?
Well, I do, because I mean, the one thing dealing with mini spares in London, any parts of a mini I want, I speak to them over there because obviously I still deal with them and I know all the right people. I got my discounts, just so I know what I'm going there. Anything else I want? Sarah, who is Mick Jackson's wife, speaks fluent French, and she does a bit of translating for us as and when she wants. Oh. So
You
This
got
is
people who can help you out with that.
absolutely yes, yes. Make sure
And,
of
and
that.
so if you, sorry, I'm asking all the questions. I'm sure Colin's got some. This is the
No, no,
last
go
one
on.
on us,
You
but
carry on, mate. Go
I
on.
was going to say, were you ever affected when Brexit came in your ordering parts from England? Did you ever get affected by any extra charges or delays on packages you ordered from England?
No, very much the opposite way around, because my company then was a company called Gripper Differentials, which I founded in 1999. And we got it really going in the mid 2000s in a big way. We were obviously exporting into Europe. We had a product which was the best in England and the best in Europe, as far as we're concerned, as regards the product it was. And we had lots of exceedingly good customers: Germany, Poland, Sweden, Finland, Belgium, Holland, France-ish, Italy, some good ones in San Marino, actually. And so it went on. But we built a product bus. The thing was, before Brexit, there wasn't a problem. You just filled in the necessary export forms, gone.
Hmm.
No extra charges anywhere apart from shipping. Brexit did not do exporting companies in Britain a lot of good. It was not helpful in any way. It really wasn't, because you had to, when you shipped, you didn't charge VAT. They got charged VAT at the other end, but they also had custom charges to pay. Whereas before, they didn't have any custom charges to pay because there weren't any custom charges. It's as simple as that. So, from my point of view, and I was for Brexit, I must confess, but when you get into the realities of business, Brexit was not good.
No.
I don't know which way that goes now. I really don't. It wasn't, to be fair, it was not organised properly. It wasn't administered. It wasn't the people who did all the administration or trying to sort out what happened or just weren't up to it. They really weren't.
Well, of course, yeah, and even now we still haven't implemented everything fully. So that's still to come, which I'm really looking forward
I think it very much felt like they were just making out as I was going along. So a problem presented itself, and they just made rules to fit around the problem.
Yeah, I mean, you have a situation where it totally killed all the seafood industry down in Cornwall, Devon, and everywhere else. Whereas you could drive out through Dover with your truck full of prawns or scallops or whatever, and you were gone. Now you've got to have veterinary restrictions and all sort of kept, done to make sure that you're complying. You lose 2 or 3 days, consequently, all the fish is gone.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, a product like that, it's got to be there almost instantly, really.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't really want to go too much on about Brexit, but it sounds like you've had a super interesting career and life, and it's been amazing to listen to it. What's the future hold for you?
You still haven't heard about the '94 Monte Carlo Rally.
Well, why don't you tell us all about that then? Because I'm dying to hear it.
Right. Back in 89, 90, yeah, I got hold of a Mini Cooper S, which somebody had got, and I bought it for good money. It wasn't as expensive, it was right. Built it up as a works rally car, which I knew how to do. I also had the help of a guy called John. His name's gone for a minute. Well, it'll come back. He was the Lucas engineer that used to wire all the cars down in Abingdon. So I got him, and he's also a friend, Stan Chalmers, as well. Both Lucas engineers employed by Lucas, and they were on secondment down to BMC. Anyway, he came because he lived in Redditch. He came and wired the car for me. So you can't get better provenance than that to get a works car done. Got all that done. I then had, I rang someone, I can't remember who it was at the time, and there's a famous rally driver called Timo Mäkinen, who you may remember or not heard of.
I've heard of him, yeah.
He won the 65 RAs, Monte Carlo Rally. He won the 1,000 Lakes 3 times and God knows whatever else. And mentioned to him that I got the car because I knew that they were going to do a historic Thousand Lakes rally in Finland. So he was up for that. So he organised the shipping of the car across to Finland, and Marilyn and I went over as well. And it was a good event. He won the event, which is what we expect. The car was good, not a problem. Everything else, car came back. Then we did about 2 or 3 other events with him. The Pirelli Marathon, which was a problem on, but whatever. Then at Rally Britannia, where he won that one. And so it was a good relationship going. The golden rule that came out of that eventually was don't meet your heroes.
All right. Okay.
Don't meet your heroes. All right. Because you will be disappointed one way or the other. We move on. Paddy Hopkirk decided, or somebody on his behalf, a guy called John Brinsden, decided they were going to do the 94 Monte Carlo rally because it was the anniversary of Paddy Hopkirk's win in 1964. Okay. So that happened. Then I get a phone call, not much bother to me. I get a phone call from Mackinnon saying, what are we doing? I said, wait a minute, what are we doing? He said, well, if Hopkirk's doing it, I want to be doing it. So we then had to organise a car. Now, in the meantime, a guy from Rover Japan in those days was exceedingly big in British Leyland, because what they used to happen was that standard minis used to go over to Japan, as standard production minis. They used to get modified in big ways and all the rest of it. And Rover Japan was doing quite well out of the whole deal. So this guy, John Towers, no, it wasn't Towers. I can't remember his last name. It'll come again. He turned up at Mini Spare Centre saying about what should we do about, they said, we'll go and see Tom Seal. He's the man to do something for you. So he did. So we sit around my table in my house in Coventry discussing things. And he says, right, he's on. He's going to prepare to sponsor us. He's going to organise a car from Leyland, or from BMC Leyland it was. So we got a brand new Mini Cooper supplied to us, which we then modified and did everything else too. I was with a bag tank in the back, whole new. I had a whole team of people on the job because I was getting a fair amount of money out of Rover Japan. Moved on a bit. I was Keith Dodd at Mini Spares wanted to do the rally as well, so he'd organised a car, which we prepared as well. Anyway, come the sort of 3 or 4 days before the event, our car was ready to go. The other thing was we'd organised for the other car to be driven by Tiff Niddell, who you may have heard of or not.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Top Gear.
And a guy called Mike Broad, who was a well-known navigator in the local area, who I've known for years. The team that I'd built the car, or finished built it for me, took it home on a trailer to a house in Hinckley. Why that happened, it doesn't matter. It got stolen.
I knew that was coming.
Stolen. Lovely. So there I am. I get a phone call at 5 o'clock in the morning from Paul, who was the mechanic who'd taken it home, to say the car had been stolen. I then sit there on the edge of the bed thinking, what do I do now? So I did a couple of things. I rang a guy called David Sutton, who you may or not have heard of, who used to run escorts for the works companies and Works Ford and everything else. And he said, whatever you do, get a car sorted out. Doesn't matter what you do.
Sorry to interrupt you, mate. We've got 2.5 minutes, okay?
All right. So anyway, we got the other car, the Mini Spares one. We went and rebuilt that and everything else because we had a spare engine and all the rest of it. And we got it all done, and we got down to Monte Carlo with the car in time to get it scrutineered and everything else. We do the first special stage. Mackinnon is 30 seconds behind Paddy Hopkirk, which he's not particularly happy about. We get to the first service area, check your old car over. I said, has anyone checked the petrol? And Mackinnon says, yes, I have. And then promptly we start off to do the second stage. I'm sort of 30 miles away from it. Marilyn and another gentleman by the name of Ron Elkins is right where Marilyn is by the end of the stage, and he ran it out of petrol.
Yeah.
You go.
It was then found in the bar, knocking back thousands because he was an alcoholic, which is fine. No question. The best thing I could have done was given him a whole load of brandy before he went off.
Jesus.
Oh my God.
You
And on
understand?
that note,
So don't meet your heroes.
There you go. All
And
right, Tom, we've got to wrap it up there, I'm afraid. We're rapidly running out of time.
I had all these Japanese people around me wanting to know what the hell was going on. You were
Okay, Tom, as I say, we've got to wrap it up there. Time's beating us, I'm afraid.
Yep.
So I want to thank you so, so much for taking the time to come and just talk about your amazing life and your contributions to the world of motorsport. And I'd
I
like
hope
to say a personal thank you to you for employing me, which is very kind. And it's always a pleasure, never a chore. So if you'd like to give the video a thumbs up, that'd be great. Press the notification bells so that you know when there's new content. Maybe think about subscribing if you're not subscribed already. And
Right.
all that leaves to say, this is goodbye from me.
it's goodbye
Goodbye.
from them.